What's up, guys? UFC 286 just wrapped up and it was a solid card. I mean, not bad. I would give it like a total 6 out of 10, maybe almost 7, 6.8 maybe. I think the Justin Gaethje and Rafael Fiziev fight really stood out on that card. Gunnar Nelson had a great performance, the best performance on the whole main card, to be honest. Submitting Bryan Barberena. Jennifer Maia versus Casey O'Neill was okay. Marvin Vettori versus Dolidze was okay. The main event, I think, was okay. Jack Shore and Makwan Amirkhani was a pretty good fight. Makwan had more success than I thought he was going to have. Yanal Ashmoz definitely had the craziest knockout of the card. Mokaev with a crazy comeback submission in that third round. A really good card all the way around, but let's start with that main event where Leon Edwards defeated Kamaru Usman by a majority decision, 248-46, 147-47. He was deducted a point in the third round for grabbing the cage, and he fouled a lot. And I'm not gonna lie, man, when fighters foul so much like that, it kills the momentum of the fight for the fans, especially when it keeps happening, because the ref has to keep stopping the action, and it's really frustrating to watch. And those two guys cheat a lot in fights. Usman and Leon, man, I don't know what's up with them, but there's always fouls happening in their fights. But overall, Leon looked pretty good, better than he did in the second fight. Showed solid takedown defense. He did grab the glove plenty of times when Usman was trying to get him down from the fence, but able to find his way back up to the feet by, again, giving up his back. Usman didn't do a really good job of capitalizing on that again. He really just doesn't have jiu-jitsu, and honestly, it's really frustrating to watch from him. But Leon threw out a bunch of good kicks. That was the biggest thing about that fight. The kicks of Leon Edwards to the leg, to the body. He brought in the oblique kicks to the knee, which worked perfectly against Usman. And we know that Usman has bad knees, so Leon could really hammer those home all night. He went up for the headshot. Right, he went up for the head kick, and some of them were landing on Usman, but he took these much better because he saw them coming this time. And that's the difference of seeing a kick coming versus not seeing it coming. When he didn't see it coming, he got knocked unconscious. When he saw it coming in this fight, he was able to take it very well. In that fifth round, he got caught with 2 of them. That's actually kind of cool because in the second fight, he also got caught by the head kick in the 5th round. But I didn't think too much of the fight, to be honest. The excitement of the fight was kind of how I expected it. Wasn't going to blow my hair back or anything like that. Just a solid back and forth. I saw a lot of people saying it was boring. I wouldn't say it was boring, but definitely not one of the better championship fights this year. And moving forward, it looks like they're setting up the Leon Edwards and Colby Covington fight, especially now that we know that Hamza Chimaev is moving up to 185. And if Hamza's moving up, he's probably going to fight Robert Whitaker. And that's a bit of a shame because I think after the performance from both Leon and Usman, Hamza would have beaten both of them. Usman's lack of pressure in this third fight was really holding him back in the fight. He stayed in kicking range for like 70% of the time, and that's why he kept getting kicked. And it wasn't like Leon was threatening him with anything from moving in. He was getting the tie plums sometimes, but even in the beginning of the fight, like, Usman did not pressure him that much, not nearly as much as he did in the first and second fights. This one, it looked like he respected Leon a lot more and stayed at distance, but that distance is where Leon is going to keep kicking him. And that's where Leon won the fight. If Usman was pressuring a lot more and being more relentless with his output, the fight could have turned out a bit differently. But Hamza Chimaev does not let you breathe, right? He comes right after you, shoots takedowns unlike anybody else does in that division. He's so big and strong, and against the fence, that's just asking for Hamza to take you to the ground. Leon's always backing away from wrestlers. I think it's a perfect style for someone like Hamza. And if you give up your back or give any position to Hamza, he's going to take that with a quickness. And if Usman fought Hamza the way he fought Leon, I could see him getting outboxed. I could see him also having to deal with a lot of takedowns as well, a lot of submission attempts as well. Tougher fight, I think, but I believe he could also beat Usman. Now, Leon seems to be fighting Colby Covington, and I think it's going to be a tough fight for both guys and much more action-packed. Leon is going to have to respond to that kind of pressure, and it's going to force him to fight more, and it's going to force him to come out with more output in order to keep Covington away. Covington is going to be shooting takedowns like crazy. He's going to be punching like crazy, moving forward the entire fight, and I really wonder how that's going to go down. As for Usman, who does he fight that he hasn't fought yet? I guess he goes up against Belal Muhammad. I think that makes perfect sense because Bilal's now going to be number 3 in the rankings, and it's the only guy in the top 5. I mean, no, actually, Shavkat's going to be top 5 now. Bro, I would love to see Shavkat versus Usman, but I think it makes more sense for Belal to fight Usman. And then if Usman loses to Belal, then he can fight Shavkat. And then we go to the co-main event. Justin Gaethje defeats Rafael Fiziev by another majority decision, where the judges were all over those scorecards. One judge gave Justin Gaethje the first round, and then another judge scored the third round as a 10-8 for him. First round was Fiziev's, 100%. Second round was close. I can see how Gaethje won that. And then the third round was Gaethje's. Now, There is a bit of an argument when it comes to Fiziev hurting him in the beginning of the fight, but then Gaethje was putting it to him. He found that uppercut in the 3rd round, and Fiziev didn't really have any answers for it. First round was dicey. Fiziev's speed was way too much. I mean, that guy is such a technical striker. His defense, even in the pocket with full fire exchanges, is so amazing to watch. He was rolling with so many counter punches from Justin, blocking them and then returning with his own counters. He landed some crazy body shots as well, taking away a lot of the leg kicks from Gaethje too, which threw off his distance a bit in that first round. Gaethje couldn't really find his distance because he wasn't able to land too many kicks. But am I crazy to say that Fiziev seems a bit too small? He is very muscle bound, but Gaethje looks so much bigger than him, and Gaethje was taking a lot of his shots, right? Fiziev was landing clean shots the whole fight. They were stunning Gaethje sometimes, but it didn't have the kind of impact we thought it would have. Now, is that Gaethje's chin being so good, or is Fiziev a bit too small for lightweight? Just a thought that came to my head when I was watching the fight. Gaethje definitely looked like a much bigger fighter, and he shot a takedown. He shot 2 takedowns in the fight. One of them was easily stuffed, or was it 3 takedowns? And then in the 3rd round, he actually got Fiziev down for a second as Fiziev was gassed out. And that's the biggest thing against Fiziev, man. In a fast-paced fight, he cannot go 5 rounds. His cardio looked good against RDA, but he was mostly in control of that fight, so he could pace himself a little bit differently. But against Gaethje, even against like future opponents like Charles Oliveira and Islam Makhachev and Dustin Poirier, these guys are going to put up a fast-paced fight against him, and he will not last. If this fight was 5 rounds as Justin Gaethje, he would have gotten finished, I think, in the 4th or 5th. But amazing combinations from him, man. Some of the cleanest striking technique I've ever seen in this lightweight division. But Gaethje was able to find a way, find great shots in the middle of the fight there, and adjust accordingly. So great performance from both guys, but definitely good win for Justin Gaethje. He got the upset there, and he's number 3 now. A win against the number 6 is good for him. He can keep his spot. I don't know if he's going to be above Dustin Poirier because Poirier just defeated Michael Chandler too. Maybe you run them 2 again. Maybe you have both those guys fight each other again. It seems to be the fight that makes the most sense because Oliveira's going to be fighting Dariush, and Chandler's going to be fighting Conor McGregor, so the whole top 5 is booked. And I think Arman Tsarukyan, Mateusz Gamrot, and potentially even Rafael Fiziev is going to have to wait for those fights to happen in order to find their next opponents, I think. Like, for example, the loser of Charles Oliveira versus Beneil Dariush should probably fight like Arman Tsarukyan next. And then like the loser of Dustin Poirier and Justin Gaethje should fight like Mateusz Gamrot or something, you know? I think that makes the most sense. And as for Rafael Fiziev, he's going to need some time off for his face to heal, but he should be back relatively quickly. Or maybe he fights Arman Tsarukyan right now, or Mateusz Gamrot. That makes a lot of sense. I love to see Rafael Fiziev fight either of those guys. Gunnar Nelson making short work of Bryan Barberena, getting a submission win in the 1st round, 4 minutes and 51 seconds. Clean victory. It was kind of interesting to see someone like Gunnar Nelson actually use his strength to get a takedown like that. He shot in the single. I believe he high crotched it, lifted, slammed him, and then slowly worked for his positions. Bryan Barberena was landing a lot of strikes off of his back, but Gunnar was slowly slicing through up until he was able to get in the half guard that arm triangle, and from there, he was really pressuring on top. Kicked out the leg so he can get into full mount, and it was actually genius of what he did there. So if you go and watch it back, he throws an elbow and keeps his arm into Bryan Barberena's face, and it instinctively causes Bryan to grab onto that arm. And while he grabs onto that arm, that's the perfect setup for him to swing around for the armbar. Genius work from Gunnar Nelson there, man. When he wins, it's always in dominant fashion. His wins are always so clean, man. And he is 34 years old. He hasn't looked like he slowed down. The hands down thing kind of worries me, but I wonder if he would make the top 15 after the performance like that, because Bryan Barberena is definitely a guy who's right outside the top 15. So perhaps he can go and fight like Michael Chiesa or Neil Magny. I think those fights make perfect sense for Gunnar Nelson. Jennifer Maia gets a decision win over Casey O'Neill, pretty much just showing better boxing overall. Her right hand was a big moneymaker in that fight. Not too much to say about the fight, to be honest, but she looked really good and handed Casey O'Neill her first defeat. And then we go to Marvin Vettori defeating Roman Dolidze by a decision, 229-28 and 130-27 on the scorecards. I thought he won. There were some people thinking that Dolidze was doing more damage and stuff, but if you really look at it, a lot of his punches were actually missing or getting mostly blocked. Vettori did a good job of keeping his hands up and ducking under the punches because Dolidze was only throwing a couple strikes. He had no variety. When he was in the orthodox stance, all he was throwing was a right hook and a right overhand. But when he actually switched to southpaw, he was throwing more variety. Like he had a left straight to a right hook combo, ducking in the middle of it, switching up levels to trick Marvin Vettori. But Vettori had everything else. He was throwing good left straights. He was throwing good counter right hooks. He was throwing good leg kicks on the inside and outside. I was kind of shocked there wasn't as much wrestling from two guys who are great grapplers. But sometimes that's what you get with these kind of fights, you know? Two good grapplers going up against each other. It turns into a striking fight. And Vettori looked like he was definitely the more technical fighter, but Dolidze definitely had more power. He threw everything he had in that first round, man, and Vettori just has a crazy good chin. So just a good performance from Marvin Vettori. It wasn't anything extraordinary from both guys. If Dolidze had more variety, I could have seen him actually start to win that fight, but he didn't go to the body. He rarely went to the legs. He was headhunting 90% of that fight with the same punch. Now that can work against like the lesser level, but when you're fighting the top 5, a guy like Marvin Vettori who's fought the champion, fought the best of the division, and has so much experience, you're not going to beat him with something like that. You know, you got to do more than just that. I think I remember Dolidze actually saying once that he never had title implications. He never cared to go that far like that. He just wants to fight. And maybe that could be stunting his growth as a skilled fighter. Maybe he needs to like reevaluate things, because if he did more in that fight, I saw how he could win that. But good performance from Marvin Vettori, and as to who he should fight next, it's tough in his position because he's pretty much fought everybody. Actually, no, he could fight Jared Cannonier. They're number 3 and number 4, so I think that fight makes the most sense. Or he could fight Dricus du Plessis. But he just fought a guy who was ranked under him, rising up. So I actually would like to see him fight Cannonier next. And as for Roman Dolidze, I like to see him get the winner of Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa, if that fight gets put together. If not, him fight Strickland would be excellent. That should be a really fun one too. It'd be an easier matchup than he just had with Vettori, because Strickland doesn't do as much. Jack Shore defeated Makwan Amirkhani in the second round by a rear naked choke submission. He got taken down in the first round, which was actually kind of surprising, but as you know from Makwan, he gasses out so quickly. He can't keep up a good pace at all, man. It's crazy. In the first round, actually, didn't look that tiring. He was in his world for like half of that round on top of Jack Shore. Nothing was really happening. He was trying to pass guard, but Jack Shore had a good butterfly hook and just keeping his full guard for the majority of the time, but then just Makwan started gassing in that second out of nowhere too. Some guys just don't have good cardio, and for how long he's been in the UFC, it is a bit shocking to see his cardio that bad still. He's always had that problem. And actually, it's one of his biggest problems. There are fights that he should have won, but he lost because he gassed out too quickly. And that shot in the second round, like a minute and a half in, I believe, he went in for the takedown and there was no drive at all, and Shore easily sprawled on this. So you could definitely see where Makwan's wrestling could have gave Jack Shore even more problems if he had the gas tank to do it. But Shore was just a better fighter. He was technically superior in most areas besides just that wrestling. The hands are better, the kicks are better, the movement's better, the angles with the punches where he was throwing the 1-2, angling off to his left for the hook. Makwan had one phase of defense for the boxing, and that's really it. He's just not a boxer, man. He's not that much of a striker. And then came the trip. Jack Shore got that outside trip as Makwan angled off at the wrong time, quickly got into full mount. Makwan's butterfly hook did not really help him too much, and he ultimately just gave up his back, and Jack Shore tapped him out. Good performance by Jack Shore, man. He is ranked number 15. Should he go up above Jonathan Martinez, who's ranked 14? Because Martinez had a good fight with Saeed, and Saeed was number 15, whereas Makwan is not even ranked. So maybe Shore still stays where he's at. It just shows you how stacked this bantamweight division is, that Jack Shore coming off a good win like that against Makwan probably doesn't even rise him in the rankings, because Martinez had a good performance, Gris Gutierrez had a great performance as well. You got Andre Yanis, who's number 12, Umar's number 11. Number 11 and number 15 is nasty, man. It's so stacked. I did miss Chris Duncan versus Omar Morales, but I heard that it was a good fight, so I'd have to go back and watch that. What about the upset I called for? Yanal Ashmoz knocks out, destroys Sam Petterson in the first round, 1 minute and 15 seconds. It went nearly exactly like I said it was going to. Sam Petterson came out there, no defense, doesn't guard his chin. He didn't even use his reach that well. He honestly reminded me of like a Stefan Struve or a James Vick. Walked forward through a leg kick, and Ashmoz just flung that overhand, which I think caught him toward the chest. It was really hard to tell live. I didn't see the replay. Threw the overhand into a left hook, which caught him flush, put him down, and then Mark Goddard, I guess, hated Sam Petterson. Like, he has like some beef with him or something. He let Ashmoz destroy his face. Just ground and pound, hook square to the face, multiple of them, unanswered and unnecessary. Or super necessary if you ask Jorge Masvidal. And the damage was so bad, Mark Goddard did such a bad job of getting in there quick enough that Sam Petterson was fighting with him for like 5 minutes. He went another round with the ref, unconscious. It was crazy because Sam Petterson was like, what, near a 3-1 favorite or 2.5-1 favorite? Ashmoz, all he needed was the overhands, man. Crack through that open guard, and that was it. Great performance by Yanal Ashmoz, who's still undefeated. And maybe moving forward, They're not going to underestimate him as much anymore. Now, this fight was crazy. It was a bit of a snoozer before. It went crazy toward the end. Muhammad Mokaev gets the late third submission rear naked choke against Jafel Filho after going through some severe adversity in that third round. So I thought Muhammad won the first round because Filho made a big mistake of going for the guillotine. He never was able to really get up after that. Mokaev did all he could to control him. Second round, Mokaev, he didn't even do much. He was kind of just moving around. He threw some kicks here and there. Wasn't active at all, and Jafel definitely won that second round because of just pure activity. He landed some really good leg kicks there. He was throwing that left hook, right leg kick combo that Jose Aldo used to do in his prime, and he threw it with the snap too. Great combinations from Jafel Filho there, but not the most exciting round. So Filho's corner kept telling him to stand up, right? Don't go to the ground. Don't relax yourself with the grappling. Sprawl and get away from his wrestling. And he actually was trying to do it. He was listening to his corner, but Mokaev's chain wrestling was just too much. That Dagestani wrestling style is just different for these guys to defend against. They think like the first time they sprawl in a takedown, it's pretty much it. But Muhammad Mokaev kept going, chain wrestling, eventually got the fight to the ground and fell into a knee bar. And you don't see a lot of successful knee bars, but this was definitely one of them. Mokaev's leg was bending inward, like Tony Ferguson's arm was bending in Charles Oliveira's armbar. I've never seen a leg bent that badly backwards. Oh, and it definitely did damage. I mean, after the fight was over, he was limping. He looked in pain the whole time after, but he survived, man. That is one thing we do want to see out of a young guy like that. Heart, grit, able to fight through adversity. And he did it and got a submission win afterward, because if he didn't get that rear naked choke, he probably would have lost that fight, considering how severe, how effective that knee bar was. It was like the equivalent of getting a knockdown in the round, you know? It was all the way in, but he was able to get around to the back, get that rear naked choke, and finish off the fight with 28 seconds left. Crazy, man. Now, I do have to ask the question, was it worth it? Because he came out of that fight way more damage than Jafel Filho did, and it's damage to the knee, which does not recover fast enough. Fighters get out of commission for an entire year because of a knee injury, and this seemed really bad. I wonder if his knee's ever going to be the same. We've seen guys go through what seemed like less injuries to the knee than that, and their knees never recover. So Muhammad Mokaev may have risked his entire career by showing his great to get this win. It is left to be seen, but if it's not injured, that's crazy. His knees are like the most flexible thing in the world, but I definitely expect him to be somewhat injured, and hopefully, man, he's able to come back, recover 100%, and get back into it, because that was a great performance from himself. Jafel Filho is definitely going to be someone ranked in the flyweight division in the future, too. So I can't really say who he should fight next. I mean, if he comes back right away, let's say he's not injured, he is number 12, so I can see him fight like Manel Kep or Matt Schnell. That would make the most sense for him, but by the time he comes back, that ranking is going to look completely different. In fact, Jafel Filho might even be ranked above him by that time. But he'll remind people when he comes back. Lerone Murphy versus Gabriel Santos was crazy, man. Murphy getting that split decision win. A lot of people thought Santos won. It was super close. I think it all fell into that first round. Second round went to Santos. Third round went to Murphy. But both of their stocks rise. This fight honestly reminded me of when Kelvin Kattar fought Shane Burgos when they were both unranked. Nobody really thought much of them until they fought each other. And they put on such a great performance, you just knew they would be something in the future. At least ranked, right? I think the same thing with Lerone Murphy and Gabriel Santos. Both of these guys are going to be ranked in the future. And perhaps they fight each other in the future, knowing how close this one was. Whereas with like Kattar and Burgos, Kattar got that knockout, which was definitive. So it was mostly orthodox versus southpaw. They were both getting their power hands around the guard, showing both of their precision. Good kicks from both guys, especially to the body. Murphy was putting combinations, I think, a little bit better than Gabriel Santos was. He was like changing levels inward to change the target. They're throwing a right straight to the body, I think it was, and a left hook over the top. But then eventually Santos addressed this by throwing a left hook immediately as Lerone Murphy changed his level. So it kind of scared that away, you know? They both had good leg kicks in the fight, good head kicks. Lerone Murphy definitely showed to have better hands, mostly, at least technically speaking. But Gabriel Santos was mixing up his wrestling so well, it was making his striking way more effective. His single leg takedown was something that Murphy just couldn't deal with that well. He would shoot, turn the corner, run the pipe, just many different angles he was taking for that single leg and getting really good positions on Murphy. But Murphy had an interesting escape one time, I think it was in the third round, where he almost like backflipped out of there immediately when he got taken down. And Gabriel Santos at the same time was trying to get his back, and that took it completely away. It was really fascinating to see something like that, because you don't see that kind of defense against someone trying to take your back. Or what about when Santos had his back? I think this was second round, right? Lerone Murphy was punching at him. Kind of how Volkanovski was doing against Islam Makhachev, throwing punches while your back is taken. But Santos got his arm. where he went straight for the armbar from that position, and he had a figure 4 on the body. That body lock went right into the armbar smoothly and almost had it. He was like 75% done with it. All he needed to do was just straighten the arm, and that was it. And I think actually Islam Makhachev said that he should have done something similar to Volkanovski before, so it reminded me of that whole thing. Or was it Khabib that said that Islam should have done that? Well, that came to my head when Gabriel Santos went for that against Lerone Murphy. I'm like, wait, this is actually a thing a lot of fighters can do. If someone's punching at you while you have their back, you can counter that with an armbar. The only difference with like the Islam situation was that Islam's back was on the fence, which made it harder to go for something like that. Santos' Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is legit. Really good fight. Dusko Todorovic getting injured 1 minute and 52 seconds into that fight. And I don't like the whole thing where you lose because of that. You know, if you're losing the fight on the scorecards, then they can maybe like go to the scorecards and say, okay, you lost. But if you lost from a knee injury and it was really like nothing the opponent did to make that happen, especially in a fight that barely even started, how can you count that as a loss? I understand like he couldn't continue, and that's what the rules state. If you can't continue, that's it. You lose. But I think in this circumstance where like the fight only was happening for a minute and then an injury happens and that makes you lose, I think it's kind of strange. Even like with the Tom Aspinall situation, it's like, what happened, you know? Oh, he lost because of this now? That's BS. Jake Hadley getting that body shot on Malcolm Gordon 1 minute and 1 second into the fight. The guy reminds me of the Diaz brother, right? He's like the English Lil Diaz brother. Good power in his shots, man. Good precision, nice boxing. I thought it was gonna be more of a grappling session from him in this one, but he had his hands up, moving really well, backstepped away from Malcolm's power and ripped that uppercut to the body and put him down. Do you know how much confidence you have to have in yourself to throw something like that? Right, you backstep, drop your hands as you throw the uppercut while the opponent's coming in on you, and you can see Jake Hadley knew it was done. He felt how good that punch was. That is such a great feeling too. When you know you got him good, you throw that shot, it feels good, and they fall, you're like, ah, that is super satisfying, man. Great performance from Jake Hadley, and I do have to catch up on the rest of the fights. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you did, make sure to give this a thumbs up. If you enjoyed my content, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.